Hello everyone, just give me 1 minute. I'm still having a problem synchronizing my YouTube and Facebook and different recordings. So I have to set the system up for Facebook. So you'll give me just 1 minute and I'll be back. Just wanted to have this running. Just 1 second. Okay. I'm going to get this a little closer. Move it a little bit on a slant. Okay. Good evening. I know it's late. We usually start at 8 or somewhat next to 8, and now it's already 9:15. I was supposed to start at 9:20. Supposed to start at 9, even according to the adjusted time that I said I would start at 9. But we're talking about time and timelessness. It's not an excuse, because in order to touch the timelessness of time, you have to be accurately on time. That's going to be so I'm totally messed up, but it's something very deep that I want to discuss with today. It's a deep idea from a discourse, a Hasidic discourse, that relates to the time that we're in right now, which hopefully we're going to experience the revelation of the third temple, of the Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi, and the convergence of time and timelessness, and the convergence of space and spacelessness that happens in the Beis Hamikdash. The nature of that revelation, the nature of the godliness and of the time of Mashiach, which in the time of the 3 weeks, that's what we're supposed to be studying. We're supposed to be learning about the temple, about the third temple. I want to announce that today's shiur was sponsored by the Lian's family, Shimon and Shendel Lian's. This is in honor of Shendel's father's yahrzeit that is tonight. So let me see. Today was the 20th of, if I'm correct, I think today was the 20th. Thursday was the 17th, Friday was the 18th, Shabbos was the 19th, Sunday was the 20th. No, today was the 21st already. Yeah, I guess so. Today was the 21st of Tammuz. So tonight is the 22nd of Tammuz. It's her father's yahrzeit, Meir Ziskin ben Reb Moshe. So may his neshama have a great aliyah from the merit of this shiur. All those who listen, much bracha to the Lian's family. I think it'll be better if I do move this back, maybe a little further, but it'll be more in front of me. I'm sorry for the patchkining around. It's upsetting that my system is a little down and it needs a repair. Okay. So here we are. Let me preface this class. I should say that I spent many hours today studying this, but I did not assimilate it. It has not become absorbed in me in a way that I'm ready to give it over. I'm totally not. But they tell me that I can't. I'm arguing, it's COVID-19, it's Corona. No one is coming to the classes anyways, physically. So what's the difference when I give the class? If I'm not ready for Monday night, I'll do it Tuesday morning. If I'm not ready Tuesday morning, I'll do it Tuesday afternoon. If I'm not ready Tuesday afternoon, I'll do Tuesday evening. If not, I'll do it Wednesday. I mean, what's the difference? But my workers over here, my wife, my workers, my wife, she says, no, you have to stick to the time. So being that that's the case, I have to stick to the time. And they're right, because time and space is the way Hashem set up a system, is the world has to operate. Even though we tap into the timelessness, but we have to work dafka through, and through the meticulousness in time do we connect to and converge time with what's beyond time. So, but the downside of that is that I don't feel at all adequate to give over tonight's class. The first thing I am is I'm discouraging everybody from listening. And I'm telling you that I don't know if I'm gonna make sense tonight. But on the other hand, sometimes the best classes come about when I'm not prepared, when I have no clue what I'm saying. And Baruch Hashem, then hopefully Hashem makes that could be a channel. So let's hope that that's going to happen tonight as well. The schus of all the participants, the schus of the one that the shir is in the name of, the schus of the liances, the schus of, everything. Mashiach that needs to come already. The schus of the teacher of this Chassidus, this is the Lubavitcher Reuven. Now, by the way, how did I get to this discourse? This Shabbos morning, I just randomly picked the mimer to teach over here in Shul. We usually learn from a different sefer, from the fourth Chabad Rebbe of Shmuel. Shabbos in the morning, we have a tradition for years. For some reason, the sefer disappeared. We were out of Shul for a couple of weeks, and I don't know what happened to the book. It disappeared. I can't find it. So this Shabbos, last week I did one thing, and this Shabbos I just randomly picked out, and on the drop of the hat, I opened the mimer that I never learned before, and I started teaching it. And it blew me away, just the beginning of it. Then after Shabbos, I started reading the rest, and it was just too deep. It was way too deep. And I wasn't shaykh to understand it. I was tired, it just wasn't going into my head. So then, Baruch Hashem, I Googled, all the help of today's technology, I Googled this discourse. And in the Googling of the discourse, I found this discourse online with a long explanation, in Hebrew, of course, wasn't in English, with a long, very, very detailed and elaborate explanation. So I printed it out. It was like 130 pages. And I just sat for a few hours and I'm rummaging through all of it. I'm reading it. And the explanations are fantastic. They've done a good job in dissecting and bringing out and explaining the deeper and harder elements of this discourse. And that's why I said that I feel that I can teach. But in order for me to really have been ready to teach it, what I should really do is now I just skim through the whole thing and is to really think about it, read it again and again, 2-3 times, and then it can become like one with me, and then I can give it over. But that's not happening, and we're going to go to the shir right now. So with God's help, let's have a miracle. The mimer is called Gadol Yeh Kavod Abayis Achroin Min Harisha. That's a discourse that was said in the year 1962 in the Shabbos before, I think it was said Shabbos Pashas Matris Masay, like this week, Shabbos Pashas Matris Masay, or maybe it was Shabbos Chazayin, I'm not exactly sure. It was during the 3 weeks that discourse was said, and later in the year 5750, 5750, which is equivalent to 1990, in the summer, the Rebbe edited this discourse, and he had it published not for the Shabbos in the 3 weeks, but for Shabbos Nachamu, which is the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av. And it's one of those discourses that are just mind-blowing. And they redefine and restructure. It's not stuff. You can see the Rebbe, this discourse is not just revealing Torah. He's like redoing all of existence. He's making the world, he's uncovering, peeling away levels and levels, gaining an understanding on the deepest points of reality in a way that has never been exposed before, even in Chassidus. That's what's so fascinating. The Lubavitcher Rebbe comes after 6 of the greatest Kabbalists and teachers of the deepest mystical ideas, the inheritors of the Alter Rebbe, Reuven Zalman of Liadi, who takes the teachings of the Arizal, and we know he was an Neshama that was sent out into this world to be the pen of the Ari, to explain the Ari. Without Reuven Zalman, it's very hard to really grasp the inner penis of the Holy Arizal. So you have these giants, and yet the Rebbe comes and reveals such an oimek, such a depth, such a mind-blowing depth in everything that, in all the teachings that were said before, but that you don't realize it when you learn the teachings from the earlier teachers. You don't see it. And he just like cracks it open. And by doing that, he restructures, it's bringing Mashiach in the conceptual realm, and then it just happens. Once it's already in the conceptual realm, once it enters into the reasoning, into the logic of time and space, then it's just a matter of time until it unfolds in the material physical world in the literal sense, which we are hoping for should be happening any moment. Or rather, I should say, it's unfolding already now. Okay. So with that introduction, and again, if I don't finish the whole concept tonight, then we can always have a part 2, and conclude in part 2. So bear with me. Okay, the pasuk in Chagi, where the pasuk says, "Gadol yeh," Chagi is one of the Triyasa, one of the Nevi'im, in the latter Nevi'im. So after the destruction of the first temple, the Eibishter Hashem communicates with Chagi, and he tells him as follows. He says, "Gadol yeh kavod habayis ha'achron min harishon." It will be greater, the honor, the glory of the second temple will be greater than the glory of the first base of the first. The honor of the latter temple will be greater than the first temple. Okay, as great as the first temple that King Solomon built, Shlomo HaMelech built, Bayis, the one later. Now the question is, what is it referring to? Which Beis HaMikdash is it saying that is going to be greater than the first Beis HaMikdash? Rashi learns, and Mefarshim, and that it's referring to it's referring to the second Beis HaMikdash. That the second Beis HaMikdash was going to be greater than the first temple. In what sense was the second Beis HaMikdash greater? In many things we know it was not, in terms of the level of holiness, and in terms of the miraculous presence of the divine, or rather the miracles that reveal the presence of the divine. The second Beis HaMikdash did not compare to the first Beis HaMikdash. But it was greater, the Gemara says, in 2 things. It was greater in structure. The first temple was 30 cubits tall. Second Beis HaMikdash was 100 cubits tall. More than 3 times the size in height. So that's greater. And obviously it was greater, meaning a more magnificent structure, if it's so much taller and greater. In the second temple itself, there was 2 stages. There was the first building of it, and then there was the renovation that was later done by Hordes, which was even more spectacular. And also in terms of its duration. The second Beis Hamikdash stood for 420 years, while the first Beis Hamikdash only stood for 410 years. And that's what we mean, that the second Beis Hamikdash will be greater than the first. The Zohar, however, interprets this pasuk, Gadol yeh kavod habayis ha'achron min harishon, that the kavod of the second Beis Hamikdash will be, of the latter Beis, it doesn't say which one, it says the latter Beis Hamikdash will be greater than the first one, is referring to the third Beis Hamikdash. That even though on the simple reading of the pasuk he's talking to Chagai, which is referring to the up and coming temple, which was the second Beis Hamikdash, but really the Zohar says it's really a reference to the third Beis Hamikdash, which is far going to outdo the first and the second temple. In what sense is the third Beis Hamikdash going to be greater, nicer? But what's the primary greatness of the third Beis Hamikdash that the first two are lacking? So the Pashtus, the simple explanation is that it's going to be in its eternity. The third Beis Hamikdash is going to last forever. It's going to be a binyan nitzchi. It's not going to be a temporary structure. It's going to be an everlasting, permanent structure that's going to last forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So those that are worried with the lasting of the planet, how long will the world last? Will the sun ever blow out? Will we ever destroy the world? I don't know, with all the things. You don't have to worry, because once the third Beis Hamikdash is going to last eternal for all of eternity, then that makes this world, it gives existence and reason for all of it. You can say the Beis Hamikdash has to be in this world. You can't have a Beis Hamikdash floating in outer space. Beis Hamikdash has to be down here, and therefore that makes the world as well be for all of eternity. So that's the greatness of the third temple. It's going to be a bayis nitzchi. We also see this in what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that, it says one of the prophecies regarding the future, it says that the Gentiles will say, let us go up. Let's go up to this to the house of it, to the house of in Zion, Yerushalayim. It says, Beis Elokei Yaakov. Let's go up to the house of the God of Jacob, the house of Yaakov. So the question is, the Gemara again, why does it say the house of Jacob? Why does it call it the house of Yaakov? We have three fathers: the house of Abraham, the house of Abraham. Another Beis Hamikdash was special already from Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu went and he brought Isaac. The binding of Isaac, of Yitzchak, took place on Har Moriah. Same as also Yitzchak was already a special place because Yitzchak was there for his own binding. And also later Yitzchak would go pray there. But we emphasize the house of Yaakov. And the answer is, the Gemara says, because like Avram, not like Avram Shekare Har. Avram Avinu referred to the place as a mountain. Bahar Hashem Yirah, and the mountain of God that will be seen. Yitzchak referred to that place as a field. And it says, Vayetze Yitzchak Lasuach Basad. That Yitzchak went out to chat, to talk in the field. To daven really means to pray. We're in the field. And like Yaakov, Shekare Bayis. Yaakov referred to it as a house. What's the idea? House represents permanence. Where do we see that Yaakov called it a house? As it says, Ein Zekim Beis Elokim. This is the house of Hashem. And Yaakov woke up from his dream. He said, how awesome is this place? Ein Zekim Beis Elokim. This is the house of God. V'zeh Shar Hashamayim. And this is the gateway to heaven. Now the idea that we're connecting the Beis Hamikdash, the third Beis Hamikdash, to the house, to call it the house of Yaakov. And by the way, the Mefarshim explained that when it says that this is Beis Elokim, it's after the third Beis Hamikdash that's in the merit of Yaakov. The first Beis Hamikdash was in the merit of Avraham Avinu, of Abraham. The second Beis Hamikdash was in the merit of Isaac, of Yitzchak. The third Beis Hamikdash is going to be in the merit of Yaakov, and Dafka, that one is really called Beis Elokim, the house of God. Now, and what's the quality of Yaakov? Why is Yaakov's bias going to be permanent? Because the midah of Yaakov is emes, and emes is permanence. The attribute attributed to Yaakov, each one of our forefathers actualized, personified of one of the various attributes of Hashem. So Avraham Avinu was the personification of chesed, of kindness. Yitzchak was the personification of gevura, strength and of might, or a fear of God. And Yaakov was the personification of tiferes, which really also means emes. As it says, Titein emes leYaakov, we give truth to Yaakov. Yaakov is the person who studies Torah more than all the other others. He's the man of the Torah. V'nasan lanu Torah's emes. Torah is a Torah of truth. And the quality of truth, the real meaning of truth is something that doesn't end. A davar she'ein lo hefsek. Something that will never end. Something that goes on and cannot change. The real meaning of truth. Usually, we think the idea of truth is you're not lying. It's not untrue. But the real meaning of true, if it's really true, then it should be forever. It doesn't change. Truth doesn't change. Yaakov is the midah of truth, and therefore his Beis Hamikdash is going to be a bayis nitzchi. It will last forever, and hence the meaning gadol yeh kavod habayis ha'achron. The greatness of the latter house is referring to Yaakov's house. Its greatness is its truth. Is that it's going to be nitzchi, it's going to last forever. Okay. So on the simple level, we can say the reason then why we need to have a third temple, and what was wrong with the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash is they were not Yaakov's Beis Hamikdash. They represented great godly features, but they didn't express God's truth, which is eternity and permanence and so on and so forth. Third Beis Hamikdash, this is going to be the one that's going to be permanent, going to be lasting forever. Because the other ones had a deficiency in their permanence. And the proof that they weren't permanent was from the very idea that they're not permanent, that they were destroyed. Both Batei Mikdash were destroyed. It lasted for a pretty nice time, a couple of 100 years. But the fact that they didn't last forever is a sign that they weren't permanent. So we need the greatness is the third Beis Hamikdash, which is the permanent, which represents God's permanence, and so on and so forth. But the truth is, we can derive from a midrash that the significance of the latter Beis Hamikdash, which is the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, in the fact that it's permanence, it's not only because the others were temporary, and that's why we need the third Beis Hamikdash, which is going to be a permanent home, in representing the permanent relationship, the unbreakable bond between God and Israel, the fact that it will last forever, as opposed to the other connections and relationship that we had before, which was, up and down, wishy-washy. We connected and disconnected and so on and so forth. But no, from the Medrash it seems to imply, as we're going to see in a moment, that it's possible that the first temple could have been a permanent temple. We know, I'll give you an example to that. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu represents also the concept of permanence. Moshe and Yaakov are really the same level. In a sense, Moshe is even deeper than Yaakov. That's why Moshe is also connected to the Torah. Yaakov is Torah and Moshe is Torah. The Zohar says that Yaakov is the external of Moshe. Yaakov Milovar, Yaakov is on the outside, and Moshe Milagav, Moshe is the inside. And Moshe therefore is also in the spherot, in the attributes, he personifies the attribute of Netzach. And Netzach means Nitzchias. Nitzchias means eternity, victory, perseverance, and eternity. Something that doesn't stop. So both Yaakov and Moshe are eternity. And that's why we know that anything that Moshe touched is forever. Moshe is not only time, Moshe is not related to any time-bound or time-limited things. Everything about Moshe is forever. That's why, take a look, we the Jewish people, we conduct ourselves like we spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu today. Moshe isn't any weaker in the world. I put boxes on my head and wrapped leather straps on my hand today with things, spent an hour wearing these boxes like a total, I understand what I'm saying, like a total lunatic, like a weird person. And why did I do that? Because there was a person called Moshe Rabbeinu who just spoke to us, as if he spoke to us today and told us to put on these boxes. That's why I'm not going to miss a day with God's help and put it on every single day, yesterday, tomorrow, and not just me. Millions of Jews today put on these boxes and besides a whole bunch of other weird stuff that we do. And why do we do these things? Because Moshe is alive. He's here. There's no change in Moshe. The one thing that's permanent in the world is that the Jews are doing the exact same things we were doing in the desert, in the wilderness, over 3,500 years ago. Because Moshe doesn't die out. He's not a fad. He's permanent. He's forever. That's why it says that Moshe's Mishkan is also there forever. The actual tabernacle, it was dismantled and it was put away, but it could not be destroyed. No one could destroy it. They can't break it. Moshe is not breakable. He's forever. That's why it says, had Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Jewish people into Israel, we would have never been able to be exiled. And had Moshe Rabbeinu built the temple, it would have never been destroyed. And for that reason, Moshe could not come into the base, into Eretz Yisrael, because for that, we'll see in a moment, that would have made the Beis HaMikdash permanent. What's wrong with that? The first temple, even if it's permanent and lasting, is not the good temple. I don't mean it's not the good. It's good, but it's not the best temple. It doesn't reflect true eternity. So even if it's truthfully eternal, it needs a deeper eternity, as we're going to explain. First of all, so where do you see that even had the first Beis HaMikdash been a permanent home, it would still not suffice, and we would still require a third Beis HaMikdash. I mean, obviously it's an oxymoron, because if the first Beis HaMikdash would have been permanent, then we wouldn't have a third one, we would have that one. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that even if we have a structure that's never going to break, we're building, obviously, the physical structures. Here's not the question if you're making it sturdy foundation, so on and so forth. We're talking about if it has the spiritual qualities for it to last forever. And that will obviously reflect in the fact that it will be a sturdy physical building. So even if we're going to have a very sturdy building, spiritually, physically, and therefore it has all the durability and lasts forever, it's not fulfilling what God really wants in terms of the eternity of the Beis HaMikdash. And we can't refer to it as the eternal temple. So that's why we have to make it so it shouldn't be eternal. Because we should be able to reveal the true eternity of the Beis HaMikdash. And that can only be in the third one. Where do you see that? So there is a medrash which says a certain comforting thing, especially for us this year, because we've had our hopes up so high. We've been so excited for the Beis HaMikdash, for Mashiach, just a few months ago, at the onset of Corona, when it came out, when Nisan came and everybody was sitting alone in their Seder in such an absurd situation. And it was so obvious that such a shake-up in the world can only be leading to the redemption. Can't have any other meaning other than the redemption. And meanwhile, a couple of months later, and it seems like we missed the opportunity. It didn't happen in Nisan. So it's comforting is that now we're coming into another time. There are certain moments when Mashiach is highlighted. They're powerful times for the Geula to break through. Obviously, the month of Nisan. Again, Mashiach can come any moment, any second. There are special opportune times. Nisan is a very opportune time. Second period that's very opportune for the Geula is in the 3 weeks, the time of the morning, being that this is the time that's going to flip over and become Yom Tov. Especially Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the day Mashiach is born. So the darkest day will meet the brightest day. It's the opposite, the idea of the lowest and the highest are connected. Because they're both emanating from the infinite one that transcends them both. So light and darkness are equal. Tisha B'Av and Simchas Torah can come and converge together like it's going to be. So now when we're coming to the 3 weeks, it's and we're getting closer to the month of Av, we draw a lot of comfort and energy from this medrash. The Midrash says as follows: Ola Aryeh, the lion went up. B'mazel Aryeh, in the mazel, during the astrological sign of the lion, during the horoscope of the lion, or whatever you call it. And Vehichriv, and he destroyed as Ariel the lion. Okay, let me translate what that means. The lion is referring to the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is called a lion. Obviously a very wicked lion, a ferocious beast. When did he come? When did he destroy the temple? B'mazel Aryeh, in the mazel, during the constellation of the lion. Every month has a different sign. The astrological sign for the month of Av, and during the summer, is the lion. So when did he come? During the month of the lion. What did he destroy? The temple, the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash, crown jewel of the world, is the great and the presence where God resides. The Beis HaMikdash is called the lion. There's psukim, which refers to the Beis HaMikdash, the Es HaAriel, the lion. Actually, the shape and form of the temple looked like a lion. What's unique about the form of a lion is that a lion is broad in the front. Like, you look at the face, especially of a male lion, whoa, it's like huge with that mane sticking out. It's like most of the width of the lion is its face and its mane, and then its upper shoulders over here, all the might in the front. And then the lion narrows in the back. So the temple was built that way. It was wide at the front, and then it narrowed in the back. So obviously, it personified the concept of the godly lion. Soon we're going to see what that means, that the highest levels of Hashem are manifesting in the temple. That's why it looks like a lion. But in any case, so Nebuchadnezzar, who is the lion, comes in the month of the lion, destroys the Beis HaMikdash, which the Beis HaMikdash is called the lion. And hear these words in the Medrash. Al-Manas, so he did that on the condition. Okay? It was all done on the condition. Sheyavai Ariel, that the lion should come. Who is that? That's referring to Hashem. Bim Mazel Aryeh, in the mazel of the lion, and in the month of Av, V'yivne es Ariel, and he should build Ariel, he should build the temple. So first of all, what's comforting over here is that it says, in this medrash at least, it says that the building of the, I don't know, coming Mashiach, but the building of the temple, the revelation of the third temple, happens in the month of Av. Month of Av, obviously, once the Beis HaMikdash is revealing itself, then the rest can also happen. When the Rambam speaks of things that Mashiach needs to do to complete his job, is when he's getting like to the conclusion of everything, he builds the temple, gathers the exile, and then eventually there's also the resurrection of the dead. That's not his job to do, but that happens. But building the Beis HaMikdash, and then the gathering of the exile. So if we have the Beis HaMikdash being revealed in the month of Av, we're going to have a reaction after that in terms of the ingatherings of the exile. But when does it happen? In the month of Av. Hashem was called the lion, like it says in the pasuk, Aryeh Shag Mila Yira, the lion roars, who will not fear, referring to God. When will he come? The Mazel Aryeh, during the month of the lion. The Yivna Ariel, and he's going to build the third Beis HaMikdash that is called a lion. Okay, so what do you see from this midrash? It's not like we perhaps would think. Why do we need a third temple? We need a third one because the earlier one was broken. The earlier one was destroyed. First one was destroyed. So now we don't have it. So we can't have, the first one we can't have anymore. That one was destroyed. So because we don't have that one, we don't have the second one, we don't have the substitute one, so now we have to have a third one. Hopefully the third one will last. So then it's all out of a necessity. First and second, and now here, now we have to get the third. But the Midrash is saying, no. That from the very beginning, God destroyed the first one, so he can bring us the third one. The lion went up in the month to destroy it, for the purpose, on the condition. Al-Manas means on the condition. which means that the reason it's being destroyed is so that but hold it. If the problem with the first one is that it's not permanent, if that's the whole problem, that you want to have a really good Beis HaMikdash, you want to have one that's not going to break, one that is fireproof, this woman is not going to break, it's going to be a lasting temple. So then don't break the first one and it will last. The only reason it was broken, it says, was so that Hashem should be able to build the third one. But if we're saying the quality of the third Beis HaMikdash is its permanence, leave the first one and the first one will be permanent. So what do you see from here? That even if the first one would be permanent, it's not good. And we have to take it down. We have to demolish the first one to clear the space so we can build the third one. So what does this tell you? That the eternity of the third temple is not just the mere fact that that it will not be broken. The eternity of the third temple is something much deeper. And that kind of an eternity we could not have had in the first Beis HaMikdash. And we needed to have that dafka in the third Beis HaMikdash. We'll understand this a little better by looking at the deeper element of the temple. We have the temple. The temple is obviously the objective, the presence of the divine in the physical world, but that's a reflection of our spiritual connection to God. As a result of Am Yisroel, the Jewish people connecting to Hashem, and through that bringing the whole world into a connection to God, as a result of that, it manifests in the Beis HaMikdash. So let's analyze the state of the relationship in the first Beis HaMikdash via the state of the relationship in the second and third Beis HaMikdash. It is explained in various places that during the first temple, the Jewish people were perfectly righteous. I know that's not going to fit well with when you open up a Navi, you start reading the stories, and you see all the chaos, and all the sinning, and all the idolatry, and all that's going on over there. Doesn't seem to be a very, it doesn't seem like it was a very tranquil time, let's just put it this way. But yet, with all the sins and with all the problems, it says the Jewish people were on a very high level, spiritually. And therefore they were called tzaddikim, they were called righteous. The greatness of the future Beis HaMikdash is that at that time we're going to have already a long history. See, that was just in our infancy. We were just born as a people. We were taken out of Egypt, and God established a covenant with the Jewish people. We came into the land of Israel. It took a little while till we settled, and we got our act together. We were obviously a few hundred years. We were able to build, but still considered our infancy. And even if we misbehaved, we were still like a youngster, So we were considered still righteous. But then, now we have already a long history of ups and downs and of shattered, a broken turmoil in our relationship, a breakup, anger, wrath, suffering, pain, misery, rebellion, turning our backs on God, going through all that we've been through. After we take a look at all the prophets came and speak about how the Jewish people misbehaved and how God's so angry at us and how he kicks his beloved, who used to be his beloved wife, out of the house. And at first he's angry, then he realizes he can't live another day without her, right? So he realizes he can't be brought, that this relationship will last. It's forever. Eventually, that's the whole idea, it's a reconciliation. Eventually, God is going back to his first love, to the Jewish people. And he brings us back. And how does he bring us back? Because as the Rambam says, that if Ticha Torah, the Torah promised, and it's not just the Rambam saying it, the Rambam saying the Torah promised, it's in Parshas Nitzavim, But the Torah says, after all you've gone through, after everything you will be going through, you will remember me, God says. You will do tshuva. You will have a change of heart. And then I will bring you back, God says. And I will do good to you more than what I've done to your fathers. That's the messianic process. And the third base something that Hashem is going to do. So on what level are we going to be then? We're going to be then on a level of a penitent. We're going to be Baalei Tshuva. Baalei Tshuva, those who do Tshuva. Based on this, we can explain the reason why the third temple is going to be a permanent temple. It's going to be a Nitzchiyas house. Why is it going to be Nitzchiyas? Because the difference between a tzaddik and a Baal Tshuva is that at tzaddik, you have no security. A tzaddik, a saintly person. So you can have a person who technically never sinned. He's a devoted servant. He's always doing what he needs to do, refraining from all negative things. But you don't really know. Why don't you know? Because you know what's going to be tomorrow. Because we know that what, as the Gemara says, Yisroel Adam is gaber olav b'chol yom. A person's inclination tries to prevail over him every day. So a person might be righteous today, like the Gemara says, Al tamen ba'atzmacha. Do not believe in yourself until the day you die. So we don't know. You never know when temptation will hit. You never know when the person will. Famous story the sages tell us where Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol was one of the great high priests. The person was a high priest for 80 years. Imagine that. 80 years the man went into the Holy of Holies. It was the holiest of Jews. And yet he became an apostate at the end of his life. And you have Elisha ben Avua, the Rebbe of Rabbi Meir. It was the Rebbe of Rabbi Meir, one of the great Torah scholars. And the evil inclination got to him as well. So a person can't trust himself. Oh, but the Baal Tshuva is a person who's been there and done that. In other words, a person who has already tried and tasted the temptations of the world. He's already been around the block many times. Has already sinned and done all the sins that are out there. And therefore has already experienced the darkness, experienced what it means to be he experienced the pleasures of the world, but along with that, he has experienced what it means to be disconnected from God. And that didn't sit well with this person. And that which led them to do tshuva. So this is a person who knows already everything that there is to enjoy, knows already what they need to sacrifice in terms for their relationship with God, and yet willfully chooses to do so because they realize that their connection to God is much dearer to them. So a person like that, you got insurance. This person will never sin. That's why the Baal Tshuva stands higher than the Tzaddik, because on the Baal Tshuva you can put your money down that they will continuously be good. That's why, you think about it. Why did the Jewish people, just a few generations ago, need to break away from God? Most of the Jewish people broke away from God. Broke away from religious life. For thousands of years, Jews were devout Jews. Jews were observant. Jews were doing all the mitzvahs. And just about 100 and so years ago, Jews took a left turn. And most of the world Jewry went astray. The observant Jews were just a minority, especially after the Holocaust. They're still a minority. So why is it? And the answer is because a Baal Tshuva is much greater than a tzaddik. So all those that are coming back and they're doing tshuva, and all Jews already, even those that are so far not practicing it, are also doing tshuva. All Jews are doing tshuva. So when you do tshuva, you're connecting to Hashem on a much deeper level than had you never been disconnected. So we can explain. Now we'll understand why the third temple is going to be permanent. Because the third temple is reflecting the Jewish people as a whole, as a people who have done tshuva. And since it is reflecting the Jewish people as a whole, as we have done tshuva, and since our connection to God after we do tshuva is permanent, absolute, and unbreakable, that's why the temple is going to be unbreakable. But the first temple, which represents the connection of the tzaddik, which again, as we said before, you can't trust him. You don't know. That would have been a good explanation. However, as we said before, that even if the first Beis Hamikdash if the first temple would be lasting, even if the first temple would be permanent, it would still require a third Beis Hamikdash. So what does that mean? That means as follows. In tzaddikim itself, there's different types of tzaddikim. There are tzaddikim, there are righteous people who technically are righteous. That means that when it comes to their behavior, they're always, since they were born, they had very good educators and trained very well, and also learned very good, very well self-restraint, and therefore they're always doing what God wants. That's great. So that's called a tzaddik, a righteous individual. But, as we said earlier, the Yetzer Hara is not going to sit back quietly, the evil inclination. So, rest assured, he will try to trick him, try to seduce him, try to bring him down. That can always happen. But then, once the revelation of Chassidus came about, and we were gifted with the holy book of Tanya, the Tanya talks about a different kind of a tzaddik, a different level of tzaddik. He says that the real meaning of a tzaddik is a person who has so thoroughly identified with God, so thoroughly attached themselves, that they have melted their Yetzer Hara. They've completely dissolved their evil inclination. That means not only are they doing good, they are good. And they are thoroughly good. So there is nothing inside of them that could even be attractive for the Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara is going to attract the person to do a sin. But that's if you are attractable. You have to have a Yetzer Hara, which is a built-in inclination, which could be attracted to that which is unholy. But if there isn't even one cell of unholiness in a person, they're completely holy. That's zero interest. So the tzaddik is also going to serve God permanently. If that's what tzaddikim means, so we say the Jewish people in the first Beis Hamikdash with tzaddikim, it can even mean, I'm not saying in the literal sense the Jewish people were on that level, but even if the Jewish people would have been tzaddikim on that level where it's not possible for them to sin, that means that relationship to God, their attachment is one of permanence, yet the Baal Tshuva still stands higher. In the place where the penitent stands, the perfect tzaddikim cannot stand, is referring to even the perfect tzaddikim of this level. Those that will never sin. Those that we do have, those that you could bet on that they will never sin. So what's the explanation? The explanation is that the level of godliness where the Baal Tshuva attaches itself, where the tzaddik attaches itself, is what's called the limited level of God. It's already the expressions of Hashem, called the Seder Hishtalshalus, the order of evolving energies. It's God's energy or God's light as it has already been measured and defined to the creation. So the tzaddik is not reaching in his bond to the very essence of God. The Baal Tshuva is reaching to the very essence of God. And only on that level is the true meaning of being emes, truth and no change. And that's the reason why only the third temple is going to be permanent, because only the third temple are we truly going to be Baalei Tshuva. And to further illustrate this point, let's take a look at the second Beis Hamikdash. The second temple, we left the second temple out of the discussion. What kind of state were the Jewish people during the second temple? And what was the second temple? Greater than the... So we said earlier, the second temple did not compare to the first temple in terms of its godliness. So we understand, if the first temple had to be destroyed, the second temple also had to be destroyed. Especially, of course, because it was a lower level. Of course it had to be destroyed to make room for the third Beis Hamikdash. But the truth is, the sages say that had the Jewish people, for whatever reason, they actually used the word, that it was fitting that God should make for the Jewish people, when he brought them back in the days of Ezra, it was fitting that Hashem should make the Geula be as great as the first redemption of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And obviously what would mean is that the Beis Hamikdash that would be built would be as great, or maybe greater even than the first Beis Hamikdash. And it would have been fulfilled in the second temple, this that it says in the Pasuk, Gadol Yiyah Habayis Ha'achroim, the latter temple will be greater than the first temple. And as we've seen that there are those commentators who say that it actually means the second temple. So it could have been, and if that would have been the case, then the second temple, then the second Beis Hamikdash would have also been a permanent Beis Hamikdash. Not only would it have been a permanent Beis Hamikdash, it would have had the quality of Balei Tshuva. What are we saying now? That the greatness of the third Beis Hamikdash is that we're going to be returnees. We're going to be those that do Tshuva. Well, at the time of the second temple, the Jewish people were also considered Balei Tshuva because they sinned, they broke the relationship, and God kicked them out of Israel, exiled them, and now they came back and they're reconnecting. How they're reconnecting? Because they're doing Tshuva. So in the second return, we are already Balei Tshuva. And yet, the second temple also needed to be destroyed. And the reason for that is, because in Balei Tshuva itself, there's levels. The Tshuva that we're talking about, which is the Tshuva, the ultimate Tshuva, is the Tshuva that currently is happening now to the Jewish people. And the consequential temple that's going to come as a result of this deep bond that we have with God now that we've never had before, even when we were Balei Tshuva. So what do we see over here? That there is levels in eternity. Even the level of Nitzchias of the first Beis Hamikdash could have been eternal. Nitzchias would have been eternal. It could have been. Again, it wasn't, but it could have been eternal. It wouldn't suffice. As we said earlier, we have to break it and make it not be eternal so that we can get a greater temple. A higher level would be the second temple, which was already the level of Balei Tshuva, which is higher than Tzaddik. And that temple would have been a permanent Beis Hamikdash. Yet the permanence of that temple would still not have expressed the ultimate permanence and the ultimate bond between Hashem and the world, between Hashem and the Jewish people. It will only be in the third Beis Hamikdash. So we need to understand what is the difference in Nitzchias? What is the difference in eternity? What kind of eternity could we experience in the first temple, and what kind of eternity will we experience dafka in the third Beis Hamikdash? So I am going to take advantage of the fact that Baruch Hashem I spoke for about, not an hour yet, but about 15 minutes. And I will make this shiur part 1 so that I can give you a much better part 2 than I would do now. But I do want to say, I'm just going to share with you the nekuda, the point of it, just a little point, just to whet your appetite. As Hashem, tomorrow night, I'm going to continue. So, just a point. The point is that the real meaning of eternity and permanence is when the permanence is not coming because God is permanent, and because He is revealing Himself and He is permanent, and His revelation and everything He touches is permanent. And because it's a godly revelation, Hashem is revealed as permanent. The real permanence is when the world becomes permanent, when it happens from below, when it's our nature. The Maayon is going to discuss, as we're going to get deeper into it, the whole quality of the temple. The temple was, one of the greatest things about the temple is that in the temple, space and beyond space converged. As we know that in the ark, in the place of the ark, in the Holy of Holies, there was a certain structure there. There was a box, right? The ark, a wooden box, covered in gold, which had physical measurements, and yet that physical box did not occupy space in the room. It was a spatial entity. That means it was an object that filled space, but yet in the room it didn't take up space. So it was kind of hovering between space and spacelessness. And it was both together. It had spatial features, but it didn't occupy space. It was outside of space. So obviously it didn't make any sense. And that was a revelation that God is, the impossible is residing over there. Hashem is there. And just like in as much as time and space are interwoven one with each other, so we can understand that in the Holy of Holies there is no time either. Or rather that time itself is beyond time, just like space itself is beyond space. That happened in the first temple and it happened in the second temple. But the ultimate display and the ultimate truth of that is going to be in the third Beis Hamikdash. And the reason is because in the first and second temple, the spacelessness and the timelessness of time and space in the Beis Hamikdash was not the nature of time and it was not the nature of space. It was because God was beyond nature, was revealing himself within time and nature, and therefore he was overwhelming and overbearing over time and nature and canceled time and space. He canceled the nature of time and space. The quality of the third temple, which obviously reflects the quality of our service, is not that God overwhelms time and space, and he expresses his timelessness and his spacelessness in the very space of space and in the very time of time, but much deeper than that. And that it is the nature. Because the place where we are going to be and the level that we haven't reached in uncovering truth, by the time the Beis Hamikdash will be built, this temple, which is any moment, it will have been after a purification of time and space, a purification of the world to reveal the godly, where we will reach the revelation and the experience, where we will see that time itself is really at its very core not bound in time. And space itself, while it is space, is really spaceless. Doesn't make any sense. The nature, if it's space, how is it spaceless? How is it the nature of the space and the nature of time? That's when we will uncover and unlock the real root of time and space itself and of the creation itself. Then we can see how time is timeless and space is spaceless. And that kind of a revelation, and that which obviously once time is timelessness, or timeless, and space is spaceless, so then we can, and that's the nature of time itself. So then we can understand how there can be permanence in true eternity. Not a projected eternity, not an eternity from the outside, but an eternity from within. And that's the real meaning of eternity. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will discuss this tomorrow night. Hashem should be with me and with all of us. And I have a better idea. Instead of me having to discuss this and talk about it, by the time tomorrow night comes, we should experience it, see it with our physical eyes. Mashiach now.